Hi everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Mani Camera podcast. Before we start, I just want to thank each one of you for taking out time for this. I am in a conversation with Mr. Abhinav Jolly today, and we are going to talk about the future of work. In the past, I have had some amazing conversations with Abhinav, and I'm sure you will love our conversation today. So let's get right to it. Abhinav, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here, Manik.
Right. Abhinav, before we get into today's conversation, could you please introduce yourself?
I'm Abhinav. I run a startup called Go Harness along with a partner, and we have a small team of 5 people based out of Chandigarh. We are an ed tech startup. I've been working in the tech, e-commerce, and an internet space for the past 3 years now, 3.5 years now. Prior to that, I was a part of this youth run organization and I shared the same stage of ISEC with Manik. So that's about me. I am interested a lot in creative tasks like photography, telling stories, and generally I'm somebody who I think of myself as somebody who wants to like try out new things and learn new things.
Abhinav, I've known you very closely since almost 3 years now, and I've also known your pretty interesting story. So, could you please, take us through your journey? You started from a college called CCET in Chandigarh. You dropped out. So, and I find that really interesting, and I'm sure our listeners would find that interesting as well. So, could you take us through your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a bit more interesting than that. It's not just me dropping out once. I actually started as a pretty like straight A student. I had never bunked a class before college. It's not that I was like a nerd, but the thought just never came across my mind, and I always liked what I was learning before college. And a lot of people kind of blame that part of the education system, plus one, plus two, 10th, and but for me that wasn't the case. It was pretty clear. And when I eventually started engineering, I took CCET as a choice because I wanted to do computer science engineering, and I could not get computer science engineering anywhere else. So I took CCET. It was like it's a small college here in Chandigarh. It's a government college affiliated to Punjab University. And I started there, and yeah, the first year was great. It was mostly like my plus R plus two repeated, and it's just basic applied sciences. But as we moved on to the actual curriculum, although I had some experience coding back when I was still in school, I could not really understand the approach they were using. And as you know, the case with our education system, it's pretty understaffed, and the staff that was there was not really trained, and like my programming teacher did not know how to write code, and it was pretty bizarre. College did try to make some changes to their credit, but it just did not work out. They did not have that approach towards learning as I had experience before this. So I used to learn everything very practically. Take an example of a mathematics question. When you do calculus, and we used to do it with graphs and like graphically plotting it on a graph, and that was pretty amazing and pretty easy to understand. But that isn't the case in our education system. You come, you give your assignment, you take your marks, and you go home. Nobody really cares what you learn in college. Nobody really cares how it applies to engineering or how it applies to commerce or how it applies to your job, whatever you want to be. So I quit that, and at that time, I was a part of ISEC, and I was doing a lot of freelancing as well because my family did not take it really well, and I had to like go through a rough patch of life where they did not like really support me financially. but that experience taught me a lot. To continue ISEC, I took admission in SD College, which is another college affiliated to Punjab University in Chandigarh, and I took admission in BBA. But to be honest, I was not really interested in doing a degree anymore, because by that time, by in those 6 7 months, I had experienced that everything that there is to learn in the world can be learned outside college because of the power of the internet. And that's what I started doing. And I ended up not going to college at all. I think I went one day, and yeah, pretty much just stopped going to that college after that. And yeah, just continued learning things in ISEC, in my freelance gigs. I started with like simple photography, moved on to like videography, and then eventually got a lot of gigs with that. That pushed me into like content marketing, digital marketing, and I started learning about all that like hard skills that you need to get a job. And eventually, because of my leadership experience in ISEC, I ended up getting a pretty sweet job in Delhi. And yeah, it was so. Here's the caveat, Manik. I think getting a job without a degree is not easy, but at the same time, in this day and age, it is not difficult. But a degree, what it essentially does to you, it makes things very easy.
Of course, Abhinav, and thank you so much for sharing that. I've
Yeah,
seen your journey, and I just wanted to ask, so you have dropped out of your college twice,
yeah.
and this debate of degree versus no degree has been around since some time now, because of a lot of big companies being started by dropouts. Where do you stand in this degree versus no degree debate? And especially keeping in mind the current gig economy, you mentioned gigs a lot in your previous answer. And for our listeners, if you can also tell what gig is and what a gig economy is, that would be amazing.
All right. So I'll pretty much start with your first question. Degrees are pretty important objectively. Yes, the world is driven by internet. You can learn anything online, especially now with the pandemic coming in. A lot of edtech companies have popped up, and they're giving you courses and mentors and coaches for everything, right? You go to master class, you can learn cooking from Gordon Ramsay, or screenplay from Martin Scorsese, right? You go to something like Skillshare. You can learn anything from making a video to how to do woodwork, right? So everything that we can learn in a degree, we can learn online these days. But unfortunately, the world hasn't completely adapted to that. You still need degrees in most companies to get a job. And frankly, Manik, not everybody is going to start something of their own. I was of that mindset that I did not want to start something of my own. I wanted to like get into a job and know the industry first. And that was pretty hard for me. I mean, it almost took me 3 months to get my first reply, let alone my first interview, when I started applying for jobs after ISEC. And having no degree was not really helpful at that time. But at the same time, as things are progressing, in a lot of careers, people are getting more progressive, companies are getting more progressive, and especially startups are very progressive in the terms of they don't really need a degree, but they still need a showcase of work, right? Degrees used to serve as a certificate, or as a proof that you are an expert, or at least you know something about a particular subject. So if I have a BCom, it just indicates that I know the basics of commerce. And if you take me into a job where I work in finance or where I work in economics, I can be helpful. If you're an engineer, and if you're, let's say, a mechanical engineer, you have the basic knowledge of how machines work. That is the promise that a degree gives to an employer, or gives to the industry. But it's unfortunately not true in every case. I mean, you can get a degree without really being an expert or without even knowing the subject. And that is why skill based hiring is kind of popping up right now. But at all accounts, to really start your career, I would advise anyone who's listening to this to have a degree in hand. And as far as the change that's been happening, Manik, yeah, the change is happening very fast, right? In probably 10-15 years time, I believe that degrees will become irrelevant because of the gig economy. And let me just tell you what gig economy is. So gigs are like small pieces of work. So imagine how Bollywood works or how Hollywood works, right? Somebody has a script, so somebody has an idea of making a film, and then this guy contacts a producer, gets a bunch of money, and gets a bunch of actors and crew and cameramen and stuntmen and makeup artists together, makes a movie in 1 year, and then they share the profit and split. And maybe they never meet again, maybe they meet again. And so this making of a movie is a gig, right? And that is what's happening to the world after the 2008 financial crisis. This gig economy really came into picture with the likes of Ola, Uber, Airbnb, these kind of companies coming up and really catching a lot of attention and a lot of track because of the flexibility it offers to the employer, to the employee and the employer. And that is really popping up. You can see Uber drivers can make a lot of money. Zomato delivery boys can make a lot of money just by not being employed and working on a like a contract basis, so like a delivery basis or per ride basis. And that's happening to every professions. You see companies like the urban company, barbers are getting involved into the gig economy. There's an app in New York where you can order a butler for a day if you want to like go on a fancy date. So these are some things that are popping up right in front of our eyes. And it's a change that is happening slowly, but in 2 years time you are going to be in a completely different world where employment and the future of work is going to be completely different than it is today.
Right. I mean, a pretty interesting answer. And I think Uber has actually revolutionized, in my opinion, they started the gig economy,
Yep.
taking a person away from the 9 to 5 job. And we'll touch upon this topic later in our conversation. But, let's get back to the first part of the conversation where you talked about the degree versus no degree debate about the education.
Yeah.
And you talked about a few skills. You can learn cooking from Gordon Ramsay, you can learn wood cutting from Ron Swanson. But
Yeah.
about and you also talked about the the skill based hiring. Abhinav, what are the top, and this is purely for our listeners, what are the top 5 skills that a person would need, that would be like the hot skills in the next 5 years?
All right. So not going into like the hard skills, but every employer is looking for these skills. They're looking first thing they're looking for is your ability to solve problems, right? They don't want someone who refers to a book or refers to a manual every time there's a problem that's thrown at them. So you need to be a problem solver. Obviously, a lot of times we don't know how to approach a problem. So this skill of problem solving, simple thing like troubleshooting a camera that is not working. So you just go on Google and type in your error the camera is showing, and chances are somebody somewhere has had that problem and they fixed it and they put a solution. These are like very basic skills that need to have. You need to have the skill of learnability, to be a constant learner where you think we're learning and evolving with time. Let's say right now I'm a designer who's working on Photoshop version CS6. It's a pretty old version, but as the new version comes out and they roll in new features and they roll in the new UI, you as a designer need to adapt to that change. You need to adapt to even new tools that come in. Photoshop is like the dominant force in the designer market, but let's say Adobe comes out with a new product, or your employer suddenly wants you to make vector graphics. Now you have to learn a new piece of software. So this skill is something that you really, really need to have. Apart from that, communication. We are moving into a world where remote working will become very normal. It was very rare to have people hire for remote positions. There used to be just one platform, Angel List, where you could hire and get remote jobs really. But now, because of the pandemic, we are seeing a lot more companies, a lot of more startups being very open to the remote working culture. And so you need, for working remotely and even working in an office, you need to be an excellent communicator, right? You're not going to build Rome with one person. You're not going to build Burj Khalifa or the next Facebook with one guy. You need to work in a team, and for that you need to be a deliberate communicator. And that's the term we use, in the software industry, is you have to communicate deliberately and kind of over communicate. The fourth and final, I'm not going to give like the five skills because it's more like four, is you need to be agile, right? You need to be smart about how you function. How do you prioritize things? How do you manage your time? What does an emergency classify as, and what is your regular workflow? So these are like the overall skills that you need. Of course, there are, like, you I can go into a lot more technicality, like what kind of jobs there are going to be, what jobs are going to be the top 15 jobs of next year. All that changes with passing time, and all that changes with the upcoming technology. These are the skills that will remain the same. And of course you can polish those skills as you go on, but these are skills that you need to have a fruitful career.
Right, Abhinav, these were very clear answers, I would say. And for a person, Abhinav, to learn all these four skills, being agile, developing good communication skills, and especially for the problem solving skill, your degree probably tells you to how to solve something,
Mhm.
but your experience actually tells you to what exactly to look for.
Mhm.
I think that's a huge skill to understand what to look for exactly in a problem, right?
Yeah.
So how would a person develop all these skills? If a person has to start right now to be employable in next 5 years, or just to sustain in the industry in the next 5 years, how should a person start?
All right, so if you are starting out, I think you should first start with working, right? With this is You are only going to polish these skills with experience. These are not skills that you can read out of a book. Of course there are like training manuals, and of course there are like frameworks to be more productive or to be a better communicator, and there are courses online. You can take them, but they're not going to improve your ability to speak. They're not going to improve your habit of communicating deliberately, or how to approach a problem. You can only do that by working. And one of my great business minds of this generation, Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, he said that it's always better to work for free than work for money and not learn, right? So he really advocates working for free for 3 years. And that's what you and me did, Manik. I mean, we worked for free in ISEC, and we got to learn so much through that experience because we were working, and because we were working in a team, meeting people, actually trying to deliver a product. This is what somebody who's starting out right now needs to do. Go find internships, go find apprenticeships, go find fellowships where you are actually going to work. Not just doing not just doing it for a certificate, not just doing it for some money if they're offering money, but really doing it for the experience. Yeah, don't do it to pass time or to get points for your visa, if you're going to study abroad, because that's a lot. These are like the main reasons why kids do that. I had a colleague who's doing really well now, who started his internship because he wanted to, get some quote unquote startup experience to so that it looks good on his college application. So don't do that for that for the extra credit. Don't do that for the certificate, but work for free for a startup or a company just to learn, right? You are going to learn incredibly. And even if you intern for 2 years, I don't think that's a lot. That's like doing an MBA, but actually kind of learning something. And I know I'm going to offend a lot of MBA people, but that is the truth. MBA is not really a degree where you learn a lot. In terms of not learning a lot, what I mean is you don't learn something that you cannot learn by doing a couple of internships.
100% Abhinav. And speaking about the kind of experiences or internships, I actually know someone who came out from a a great college, one Ivy League college,
Mhm.
and then did 8 internships over the span of 2 years in different industries in different cities just to get that kind of experience. And I think that's really commendable. And Abhinav, one another topic that I wanted to touch upon, and something you said that you can talk about a lot of technical skills that are going to be hot in next 5 years. Growing up, we did not have this accessibility to this kind of technology, right? In the
Yeah.
past, I would say in the past 2 decades, the accessibility to the technology, it has grown a lot. And
Mhm.
while we were growing, and when I say we, and any person, let's say over the age of 23,
Mhm.
we knew that the kind of skills that we want, minimums we should have are how to file taxes, or how to handle your own finances, how to do investments, how to sell something, right? But with the kind of technology that has actually seeped into every dimension of our life, there's fintech, there's edtech, there's technology in healthcare, entertainment, everywhere. What are the minimum skills that a person will need to have in the next 5 years?
All right, that's a pretty interesting question, and lot of thought came in my mind when you were talking about how technology wasn't there and it kind of slowly crept in into our lives. So I'm just gonna give you an anecdote. We used to have a DVD player back in, I think, 2004, 2005, when DVD players got all the rage, and we only had one DVD, which is Doom 2. And because we only had one DVD, I was a kid, I watched Doom 2 upwards of 50 times. Yeah, I know what dialogue comes where and what Hrithik Roshan is gonna do where, because of of the fact that I saw that movie so many times. Now you won't do that now. I have three OTT services that I've subscribed to, and I do not watch a video, or watch a movie or watch a TV show if it's asking for too much commitment, or if I've watched it again. And that's the kind of access we have, and we've not evolved with that access. It's not that this kind of access has been with us for the past 100 years. We don't know what to do with it, and it can be really really scary and really really overwhelming, the kind of access we have. We see people around us learning about a lot. There is social media, there are so many technologies and so many fields that you can go to. All this can be scary, but don't worry, that you don't have to do everything. Please go ahead and try out a lot of things. Don't stick to one thing. As a person I admire says, specialization is for insects. And we are human beings, and we are born with a creative desire and a creative instinct. I think you should definitely go out and experiment a lot. As far as skills come, the top skills that I think, in my perspective, you need are, you definitely want to have good Google searching skills, right? That is the number one skill to master, and that is more in line with problem solving. You can polish this skill by just being a student of everything, you know listen to different podcasts, watch different videos, be interested in more topics, and then at the same time practice googling your problems, right? That is going to immensely help. Definitely you should have some content creation skills. So if you're good with writing, blog a little. If you're good with visuals, start designing and start making videos. So kind of practice those skills. And the third and the most important aspect is some sort of programming, right? Programming is going to be the future language, come what may. Elon Musk is trying very hard for humans and machines to sync with his latest developments on the neural link. And yeah, coding is going to be a huge part of our future. We've already seen like startups like White Hat Junior getting acquired for $300 million. They just started 3 years ago. This is not happening just as a fluke. This is not happening just because times are really weird. This is happening because coding is going to be the future skill. Coding is going to be involved in every job that comes out there. And it seems very, very distant, but it is not. It's like we've recently discovered maths, and every human being thinks that they don't need to learn math, but it's going to be mandatory for everyone to know basic math. So definitely go check out these three skills. They are not difficult to learn, and yeah, just pick up some basic skills and see what you're interested in.
Definitely, Abhinav, and I think a lot of companies are actually trying to, to teach coding and programming to kids as young as the age of 10. We'll talk about this someday later because that in itself is a huge thing to talk about. But
Yeah.
Abhinav, how does one person make sure that all of this technology, referring to what I said, has seeped into all the dimensions of our lives? How does one person make sure that all of this does not become overwhelming for a person?
All right. So this is Manik. This is something that I personally have been practicing for the past at least 6 months, and I've kind of slowly realized how technology has affected us. Especially in the pandemic, when we were all were inside, we had nothing to do but just ponder, in fear of what's going to happen, the whole pandemic situation, the whole corona situation. We were watching a lot of Netflix and doing a lot of things online, right? So this kind of opened the door for me, and I could see what is happening. We've not evolved with this technology. You need to understand that this is not something that we've been doing for the past 100 years. This is all very new. Nobody really knows how to deal with social media. It's a very different world. You cannot see the person who's writing that mean comment or who's harassing you. You cannot understand the feeling that somebody gets when they're getting likes, because this is, remember, all of this is based on how much dopamine gets released per second. These apps are have been designed in that way. Netflix wants you to sleep less and watch Netflix more, right? And these are not evil companies. It's just the way these apps are designed, and it's just the way these businesses is going to keep making money. We as users and as consumers of technology have to realize that there is a sudden abundance of access in front of us. We did not have access to so many movies 10 years before this. In fact, I remember in 2014 I used to have 5 GB of data per month on my broadband, and I used to be very careful in figuring out what YouTube video to watch, so as I don't expire my data. And right now I have unlimited access to data. I don't really think about what am I watching. So we suddenly have, in 6 years, we have unlimited access to the internet. In 6 years, we did not have applications like Swiggy or Zomato. We used to order from our local restaurant or like go eat Maggie. But now we have access to every restaurant in the city, and that is becoming more and more accessible to more and more people, with internet reaching all across the country. with companies like Geo providing 4G internet at a very cheap cost. So, and as internet access is increasing, as more businesses and more on-demand economy is coming and gig economy is coming, this access is becoming easier, and it becomes very difficult to navigate. And whenever there is more access, there are going to be problems. I'm sorry if I'm going too long on this, but look at how what happened when we suddenly had more access to food. Food was not very abundant in like the 17th, 16th and 17th century, and suddenly food started becoming more abundant with refrigeration and preservatives coming up, and we had so many health issues coming with that. You know, the the diabetes pandemic, more like an epidemic now, hypertension, heart problem. These are like the top three killers that kill a lot of people every year. All this has become as a result of abundance of food. You know, things like fast food, you can get your burger with a like fries for under 2 minutes. All this is access that you did not have, and now you do. And similarly, the same thing is going to happen with the internet, right? Because of that extra access, you will also have a lot of problems. Now I don't know what those problems are going to be, but whatever it is, we need to be ready for it. If you're listening to this, please make sure that you're taking good care of yourself and that you're not overexposing yourself to the huge access that you have from social media and from all these other apps. That's basically it.
Right, Abhinav. And I do agree with, whatever you said with the abundance of the content. I think we were not evolved for this kind of abundance, especially in the terms of internet, because internet is really huge, very vast. And whatever you said about the calories intake, and that's something I am really interested in, but a topic for another day. So we have talked about the skills that we are going to need in the next 5 years. We have talked about
Mhm.
how the abundance of internet can get very overwhelming and actually create a lot of problems. Now the question is, what are the social applications of the technology? Because okay, I'll tell you, I was reading this book. I think the book's name is The Future is Faster Than You Think. So I was reading, and there was one paragraph about how VR is being used to treat PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, in soldiers in
Mhm.
some part of the world. So, and I think that's amazing. No one would have ever thought that you can actually treat a PTSD with technology, right? So,
Mhm.
what's your take on this, and what are the other possible social applications for the technology we have right now, or we can at least imagine in the future?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the first thing that really happens when a new innovation is there, some is the government invests in it, right? So it's mostly a government project. So when microwaves were invented, the microwave wasn't invented for people to warm their food. It was invented for military communication, and then they realized that, oh, it heats up everything that has water in it, and that is how the microwave became a public commodity. And similarly, MRI machines was also made for some defense purpose, and they realized that it can be used in medical as well. And that's when private companies come and commercialize it, and then it moves to the next stage, which is social welfare, when it becomes so abundant and so cheap to use that it can be used for not for profit and non-profit purposes. And that's what's happening for internet and for technology right now, because all this technology is becoming more accessible, cheaper, and more and more people have access to use this technology. If you ask me, internet was around in the year 2000 as well. When the dot-com burst happened, and companies like Amazon and Google really picked up pace, internet was around back then as well, but the access was limited to very few people. Right now, my maid, the rickshaw wala I saw today, all of these people have smartphones, and they're watching YouTube videos, and they're listening to to the people they want to listen to. So this access is slowly creeping up into everybody's life. As far as like these amazing applications like treating PTSD with AR VR is concerned, this will happen slowly as like AR VR equipment becomes more accessible. And definitely I think entrepreneurs should take a lot of interest into it, because this is also a very promising field where they could contribute to the world, and at the same time, you know, build a company or build a startup around it, is contributing to the society. And one very interesting and not so far away application of this is blockchain. Now, I don't know if you've heard about blockchain. You probably have heard about crypto, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. It's because Bitcoin really exploded back in 2018, and we got one Bitcoin, I think, for 13,000-14,000 dollars. I think it's running at 10,000-11,000 dollars still, and that happened as the hype train caught up when one of the Scandinavian countries adopted cryptocurrency. And yeah, so the government adopted it and became more accessible. But blockchain is going to be much more than that. For people who don't know what blockchain is, it is a chain of blocks, and it basically means it decentralized trust, right? So just to give you an example, you go to a bank and you give the bank your money, and your bank keeps that money and lends it to others, and you're trusting the bank with your money. And why you're trusting any random bank with your money is only if they're kind of registered with the government, right? So if the RBI recognizes that bank, that is a legit bank. Yeah, you don't give your money to a friend or any shady guy who's promising that he will give you 10% interest on your money. You only do it with a bank. But even there, the trust is centralized to HDFC or SBI or ICICI or Oriental Bank or whatever bank you use. The trust is centralized to that banking entity. With blockchain, this trust is going to be decentralized to every user. And think about what kind of possibilities that opens up. You can decentralize health records, you can decentralize insurance, you can decentralize social security, right? So all these, amazing things can be decentralized, where you're not just trusting the government, you're not just trusting the insurance company, you're not just entrusting the healthcare system of the country. You're putting that trust into every citizen, and because of that decentralized trust, there is more security around your data and around the possibilities of what you can do with that data in general. So this is something that is going to come up. And how is that going to help? It's a bit complicated, but in a nutshell, more people will have access to better services because of technologies like blockchain, right? Insurance will become cheaper, healthcare will become cheaper, it will become better as your healthcare records are available at a click of a button. So you don't have to go test yourself for a genetic condition every time you change your doctor or every time you change your healthcare plan. So these are things that are going to be very handy, especially when it comes to people who cannot afford to know buy expensive insurance or buy expensive medical services, right? Just some examples of how technology can help with social welfare.
Thank you so much, Abhinav, and it really shows how much you are interested and how much actually you know about this topic. And thank you so much for your answer. Abhinav, my last question is, and I'm sure you get this a lot,
Mhm.
and it's very vast question, but I'll still ask: is AI going to eat my job, or is AI going to eat me? But we'll talk about this later.
Yeah, AI is not going to eat your job. In a nutshell, AI is not going to eat anyone who has a creative job for now, right? Again, for now, it has a very big asterisk. Depends on what you define on what AI is. One, AI is your basic machine learning and crunching of data. So You browse Netflix, you watch a lot of comedy movies, and it shows you comedy movies. That's not very surprising, and that's not very hard to learn. A dog also can learn with your patterns, and a dog is pretty smarter than this piece of algorithm. So no, this kind of AI is not going to take your job. Of course, the kinds of jobs that have a lot of repetitive work. So like factory workers and maybe even drivers, they might they are right now in the risk of like losing their job, quote unquote. But generally speaking, general AI, which is the AI which can think, that is a very scary aspect. And we as humans, we are in a weird place. This is called the God complex, and because of the technology, we're losing touch with the religion. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, not necessarily a good thing, but we just want to have some end of the world, right? And we kind of are scared of this big thing, the Matrix or AI that can think, and that is going to just wipe us all out. As far as jobs are concerned, creative jobs are not going to go anywhere. And whenever some kind of innovation happens, it takes away some jobs, but it also gives rise to a lot of new jobs. Take for example, when we were early people, we used to do a lot of hunting gathering, take care of children, and do going out and gathering fruits and hunting like small animals. And then farming came in, and the farming revolution comes in, and hunter gatherers kind of lose their jobs and they started farming. When the industrial revolution came in, a lot of farming jobs were lost. A lot of daily a lot of jobs that required handwork, so handy looms, weaving cloth, printing, or just writing books. So earlier books used to be written by hand, and when the printing press came along, these people lost their jobs. And of course, because of this printing press technology, or because of the factories and because of the machines, a lot of new jobs were required. Machine operators. Same thing will happen when AI comes and kind of makes things easy for us. And it's only good for you because it's going to leave more time for us to be creative, which is what we truly want to be. If everything, every menial task is done by the AI, if you don't have to drive to work, an AI takes you to work or anywhere else you want to go, it only leaves for you to have more creative time, right? To have more time to think and create and build new things. And that is what I think human beings are designed for: building things, growing things, and creating things. So no, AI is not going to take your job. And even if it does, you can definitely go reskill yourself and get yourself a nice creative job that you love.
Amazing answer, Abhinav, and thank you so much for that. And yeah, I
Yeah.
think even if the worst happens, the one skill that is going to come in handy is our skill of learnability. And that's
Yeah,
something we talked about. Abhinav, I tried a lot to stop myself, but I think I have to ask this. Is AI going to
absolutely.
eat me?
So, Manik, AI is not going to eat you. I don't think that is a possibility for the next 100 years. See, building a brain that is smarter than the human brain is very difficult. Right now we are not even able to map an amoeba neural structure, which is not that complicated because an amoeba is like a single-celled organism. And building a brain that is as complex as a human brain with so many neural networks, and it's not about what is happening in that wiring of the brain, but what is happening inside the brain cell as well, because a brain cell in itself is also a living thing. So building that is going to be very difficult, very long, and probably I think human beings will outsmart and become more smarter with their decisions and how they build this AI. But I don't think it's going to be the problem in the near future.
Yeah, like I would want to bet on that. And yes, we
Yeah,
are done with our today's episode. Abhinav, thank you so much for being on the Manik Kamra podcast. I know
yeah.
a lot of smart people, and you are in the top three. One last advice, Abhinav, that you would want to give to our listeners.
So first of all, just thanks for having me. Yaar. It's been a pleasure. And for everybody who's listening, just one piece of advice is make sure you're learning something new every day. and stay safe. Good luck, and just keep listening to this guy's podcast. I think he's going to bring some amazing content and some great people on this podcast, and you're going to absolutely love it. So
Right, Abhinav. Thank you so much. And I hope to do another episode super soon with you.